SpeedWeed first, and then we'll come to you, Bear. So, yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Do we have John Ford?
Yeah.
Do we have John Ford here? Okay, ask Jim.
Hello.
All right. Like to introduce our next panel. It's a delivery company out of Los Angeles called SpeedWeed. I think a lot of people have heard of them. Very interesting company that I really didn't know about until like 2 months ago. So I appreciate them coming out. So we have Jennifer Gentile. She's the COO of SpeedWeed. She handles all the day-to-day operations, human resources, and all of those things. You have 55 employees, is that correct?
We do.
All right, 55 employees. So you also have experience doing
Commercial production.
Okay, all right. Very interesting. Okay. It's interesting who gets into the industry.
It is.
So, and then we have AJ over here. He's the CEO. He's calls himself a lifelong entrepreneur and technology aficionado. So he develops all sorts of IT solutions to problems, and so we're glad to have you both, and we're looking forward to hearing more about SpeedWeed and how you guys fit into this this upcoming regulated market. So,
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks to Tim, thanks to Member Ma and the BOE. The BOE has been a fantastic agency. We're really appreciative of this opportunity. Our third partner is my brother Gino. He's there in the audience. As Tim said, we operate SpeedWeed. Now, don't judge us by the name. Go back in time, we might have changed it. But we have about 30,000 members at this point, and we service 6,000 square miles around LA County. And we are the largest legal cannabis delivery service of our kind ever conceived. What is surprising, I think, to a lot of people in the industry, and was certainly to my family, is that we are a law enforcement family. So ever since we started this business 5 years ago, we've always been focused on compliance and safety. Now, initially that was out of fear. You don't want to wind up in jail, and I certainly don't want to call from my dad, the former NYPD detective. But as the laws became more cooperative to our type of industry, and compliance started to become a realization, we made our business model specifically geared toward that. And as new laws and efforts were introduced, we tried to implement all of those into our model in real time. So we entered this industry in 2010, and prior to that, we spent a decade developing constituent management software and office efficiency software for elected officials, government agencies, and law enforcement agencies, from small municipalities like village mayors to large state houses like the State Senate of New York. And in fact, one of our best clients about 10 years ago was the California Board of Equalization under Judy Chu. So we miss her. We love Chairman Horton, but we do miss Judy. So we have a lot of experience with building out enterprise-level applications for different types of industries. We talked about track and trace. Track and trace is something that we built for the town of Brookhaven in New York. We have the taxation agencies in New York State have real-time visibility into the businesses that utilize our software. We think that's something that the BOA may be interested in at some point. All of our drivers, all of our orders, all of our patients are GPSed and tracked as well. We QR code every product, every item, everything, whether it's cannabis related or not, is tracked, and we know where all of those individual items are, wherever they are in real time. And a big part of our success has been leveraging that technology and utilizing what has worked for large enterprises in business and in government, and then applying it to what we do.
Right. So we're very excited to do panels such as these because I think it's so important to help the political leadership in the state to create a regulatory environment that helps companies like us that want to be transparent and compliant to be so and to be as successful as we've been able to be in this industry. So if California were a country, it would be the world's 18th largest economy. And while we have tons of respect and love for Colorado and Washington and Oregon and those states that have led the way in legalization and regulation, California should be the de facto leader in this industry, absolutely, without a doubt. And regardless with what the other states are doing now, wherever California goes, the rest of the country will follow. So we feel it's really important to get this right.
Absolutely. I read an article recently from an author, I think her name was Fiona Ma, who said in 2014, Colorado collected $44 million in sales tax from marijuana sales. And that same year, California collected the same amount of money. We have 30 million more people here. So there's clearly a problem. So that problem is the off-the-books businesses.
Right. Until a regulatory structure is created where business owners that want to be compliant and transparent feel that they're safe and feel that they can come out of the shadows, they're always going to hide their cash. They're always going to pay their employees off the books. And when you start talking about all of the traditional things that businesses have to do as just a business, not even counting a cannabis business, and then you add on top of that the federal 280E law, excise taxes, licensing fees, payroll taxes, keeping your employees on the books. And then you start talking to them about hiring third-party companies that have to come in and do transportation for them and have to help them do all of these other things. People just, they tune out. And they say, I'm just going to continue to run my business the way I've been running it. It's worked so far. It's worked for the last 10 years. And that's kind of where we have to come together, I think, as an industry and as a legislature and work to find that happy medium to where people can come out of the shadows and still feel comfortable that they can make a living doing that.
Yeah, when we talk about compliance, there's a lot of app companies that are making the news lately. We talk about Ease and Canary and Nestdrop, who got in some trouble in LA, and of course Meadow, who's represented here today, I
Right.
believe, and I'm a fan of David Huis. These companies, these are, what am I trying to say? They have different challenges
Yes.
than we have. When we look at our competition as a delivery service, there are 400 to 500 delivery services in LA. When we were working with Nestdrop, the CEO, Michael Piker, he interviewed over 600 delivery services statewide. He found 2 that were operating compliantly, and that was us and Spark up in San Francisco. Now, there may be others, and I don't want to single anyone out, but that speaks to a tremendous problem, and it's not just about marijuana compliance. You've got your paperwork, and your employees have their recommendations. It's more than that. It's about, are you paying them on the books? Are you paying them a fair wage? Do you have your insurance in place? You're paying your payroll taxes, your federal taxes, your state taxes. Are you doing all of that? Do you have your licenses locally and in the state? And are you doing all of those things? Most of our businesses are not doing that. I would say less than 5% of the businesses in LA on the delivery side are doing those things.
Right.
It's a real problem, and it's a struggle for us to compete against that type of gray market scenario.
So I'll just tell you a little bit about how we run our company and how it's a little different than delivery services. When you think of delivery services in general, I think the main thing that comes to mind for most people, including consumers and law enforcement and legislators, is you call the guy with the beeper and he shows up with his tackle box full of weed and cash, and it's like an Avon lady or an ice cream truck. And that's still how a lot of those services operate today, which, talking to the captains we're talking, not only is that incredibly dangerous for the drivers themselves and the businesses, it's just not, it's not the right message as an industry that we want to be putting forward. And we also found out that it doesn't scale. The reason we're able to cover such a large area and have such a large patient base is we're doing a lot of those things that you've been talking about. We have central hubs around the city. Our drivers only carry 1 or 2 orders at a time. Everything is already pre-measured in smell-proof, heat-sealed bags, in a bag, in the trunk. They carry a 15-page legal packet that has all of our credentials and all of their credentials. Everybody's a patient. It's run very much like a business because that's where we come from, is from a business background. And we found that while that raises our overhead exponentially, it lowers our legal problems exponentially, and it makes the patients much more comfortable to order from us because it's somebody that's a clean-cut young man or woman that shows up at your door that's knowledgeable, that's a patient, and brings you your medicine in a bag that looks like it's a food delivery. It's very discreet, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for that. And so I think that that's a message that needs to get out there. This is an industry where your mainstream cannabis consumer is no longer what we see on the news when they show cannabis cups. There are people like me, there are soccer moms, there are executives, there are legislators, there are doctors and lawyers. And those people need to be able to come out of the shadows. But
Now I see a problem there, though, and that's with the trust factor. And that's one of the challenges I think we're going to have with the different sets of licenses. Because if you look at SpeedWeed, and we're a large business, we are a cultivator, we are a distributor, we're a manufacturer, we're a retail, we're transport. We even have a security division. Now, our security is run by former DEA, FBI, DOJ, and DHS because we have those law enforcement and political connections to do that. So when you work with SpeedWeed, you know that it's a trusted brand. But what happens when all of these separate entities get licensed out? How do I know that lab is meeting the standards? How do I know that transportation company is meeting the standards that we have set? Or that the product is meeting the standards that we have set and that our customers have come to trust? So and I hate to do the analogy to alcohol because it's apples and oranges, but if you look at Anheuser-Busch, they have a say in the quality control of the hops to the brewery, to the distribution, right to the retailer. They have a say in that quality control. So if we're going to separate these licenses, the individual businesses need to have some type of reach and say into those licenses to make sure that the quality is being delivered to the patient consistently every single time.
right, and that also as you're spreading out these licenses, you don't make the cost so punitive to the retailer to go through all of those steps up to where the manufacturing is happening, that people will just skip them.
Like they're skipping in Colorado. I don't know how many people know this, but most marijuana in Colorado is sold off the books. Maybe it used to be 70%, maybe it's 60, maybe it's 55, but it's still most. And the connoisseurs would tell you that the best weed in Denver is not in the shops. And that's because of punitive taxation and complicated regulation. So we are very excited about California because they seem to have observed the problems in the states that have sort of led the way and are trying to correct them and get ahead of that.
Right.
And we need that. Otherwise, this will become the biggest black market in the world for cannabis, and we cannot allow that
No.
to happen.
No. Time's up.
Yeah, my timekeeper, sorry. is
So
getting-
we'll stop.
Are there any really brief questions for SpeedWeed? I actually, you kind of guys hinted on it, regulations coming. Are you guys going to have to change, or is it going to be, what does SpeedWeed look like under regulations?
Right, that was one
So-
point that I didn't get to hit because I got off on a tangent, which happens. My main concern, I think, for us is when you talk about having to have a local license as well as a state license. When we deliver to so many different municipalities and so many different counties and cities, to have 58 different counties in the state, to have to be able to have a license in every one of those states when what you're talking about is a private transaction in someone's home, I think that's something that needs to be very closely looked at when you're talking about a delivery-only model.
We do, and because there will be litigation forever over that.
Absolutely.
Because it's a private transaction in someone's home. So when you use zoning laws like some cities do to regulate delivery, that's a slippery slope. Because I don't want to be zoned what I do in my living room between two legally qualified patients. Certainly, we like having a regulatory structure, but it needs to make sense, and privacy of the patient needs to be respected.
Okay. Thank you very much. Once again, great presentation and thank you for coming out here all the way to Sacramento. I know it's not LA, but I'll have to do. So
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, yep. Thank you very much. We'll change the name tags, Barry, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to skip over back to panel 3, and this is Barry Broad. He's the managing partner of a law firm, Broad Guzman LLP, and he's also the director of the California Team